My husband took a trip with his female best friend. My fiancé just texted me, wanting a serious dinner to discuss wedding expectations. But here's the kicker, this is the same man who spent weeks planning a month-long trip to Thailand with his female best friend, claiming he needs one last adventure before our marriage makes him lose his freedom. I'm just sitting here, staring at this ring, wondering what fresh hell he's about to unleash tonight. Honestly, if the last 6 weeks have taught me anything, it's that every conversation with Julian feels like I'm losing my mind. Every single time, I walk away questioning my sanity. Because, can you imagine? Listening to him parrot Sienna's relationship wisdom like she's some kind of enlightened guru, then finding secret text messages where they call me jealous and controlling? Watching him book this whole elaborate escape with another woman just 2 months before our wedding? Yeah, this dinner tonight? I just know it's going to be the breaking point. So, let me tell you how we even got here, because I need to process this before I walk into whatever fresh nightmare he's got cooked up for me. It all started 6 weeks ago. Julian came home from Sunday brunch with Sienna, and I could tell something was off. He had this weird, almost manic energy, nervous, but also buzzing, like he was about to drop a bombshell he knew would be controversial. I was sitting at the dining table, innocently folding wedding RSVPs, checking off names of guests who'd be watching us say I do in just 2 short months. He sat down, looking all serious, and then he hit me with it. He said Sienna had opened his eyes to something he'd been feeling but couldn't articulate, that marriage is, like, forever. And forever, apparently, is a really, really long time. So, before he committed to this forever, he needed to make sure he knew who he was as an individual. Because once we were married, he'd be locked into family obligations and responsibilities and routines. He'd never have another chance to just be spontaneous and free and himself. His solution? One last trip before the wedding. 1 entire month. In Thailand. With Sienna. To find himself before he lost himself in marriage. I just sat there, a stack of RSVPs in my hand, cards from people who'd already bought plane tickets and booked hotels to watch us promise forever to each other, and I just stared. Stared at him. I asked if he was serious. If this was some kind of sick joke. He just looked at me, dead serious, and said, "No, I'm completely serious." He went on about how Sienna takes these freedom trips with all her friends before they get married, and how she'd explained to him it was crucial for his mental health and our future relationship. Because, apparently, the strongest marriages are between two people who know themselves as individuals first. I just blinked. I asked him, why couldn't he go with his guy friends? Or better yet, why couldn't we go together? He actually scoffed. Said his guys would just party and wouldn't give him space for real self-reflection. And a trip together? Oh, that would defeat the entire purpose. He needed distance from us, yes, that's right, us, to figure out if he was truly ready for us to become permanent. He needed to experience life without me to make sure he wanted life with me. My jaw was on the floor. The way he explained it, our entire engagement sounded like some impulse buy he needed to verify before it was too late. Like he'd proposed on a whim and now he needed to double-check his work. When I dared to point that out, he got instantly defensive. "You're being dramatic," he snapped. Said engagement is just a promise, but marriage is legally binding. And apparently, it was actually really mature of him to want to make sure he was mentally prepared. Most people, he lectured, don't have the self-awareness to recognize their needs before it's too late. The nerve! For the next few weeks, it was a constant battle. The arguments were relentless. Every single conversation, every single waking moment, seemed to circle back to his trip. He and Sienna were already planning, deep into itineraries. I'd overhear their calls, all about temples and beaches and full moon parties. They had the whole thing mapped out. And whenever I tried to voice my concerns, even gently, he'd shut me down. Oh, with the therapy speak, of course. He'd accuse me of trying to control his autonomy. He'd say my discomfort with his female friendships revealed my insecurities. If I really trusted him, he insisted, I wouldn't have a problem with this. He just kept quoting Sienna like she was some kind of enlightened relationship guru. Sienna says couples who give each other radical freedom have the strongest bonds. Sienna thinks people who need constant reassurance aren't ready for marriage. Sienna believes I need to explore this now or I'll resent you later. Every single concern I raised, every single boundary I tried to set, was instantly met with some new Sienna quote about why I was wrong. Finally, I snapped. I just couldn't take it anymore. When exactly, I demanded, did Sienna become the ultimate authority on our relationship? I mean, the woman had been single for 3 years, never even lived with a partner, never been engaged. What, in God's name, qualified her to dole out marriage advice? And Julian? He just gave me this sickening, pitying look. Said, that's exactly why her perspective was valuable. Because, apparently, she wasn't emotionally compromised like I was. She could see our relationship objectively, while I was too close to it. Too invested in the wedding to think clearly about the marriage. Too invested in the wedding, our wedding, the one we'd been planning together for 8 months. Suddenly, my commitment to our future was a character flaw. Unbelievable. Then came the real gut punch. I found the messages. And let me be clear, I wasn't snooping. Julian left his iPad open, right there on the kitchen counter, and the messaging app was just open. What I saw next made my blood run cold. Months of conversations between him and Sienna. She was pushing him, relentlessly. Are you sure she's the one? You're only 29, you have your whole life ahead of you. She seems very focused on the wedding, but is she focused on your happiness? Marriage is forever. You need to be absolutely certain. And Julian's responses? Just as chilling. Sometimes I wonder if I'm settling. What if I'm just doing this because it's what's expected? I love her, but is that enough? You're right. I need to really think about this. But the absolute worst message? From just 3 weeks ago. Sienna wrote, if she really loves you, she'll support this trip. If she fights you on it, you'll know she's more interested in controlling you than understanding you. And Julian's reply? You're right. This will be a good test of whether she's ready to be a wife. A test. Our entire relationship, 2 months before the wedding, was a test. Designed by another woman. When I finally confronted him about those messages, you know what he did? He didn't apologize. Not a single word of regret. Instead, he exploded, accusing me of invading his privacy. Said my snooping just proved Sienna's point about my supposed trust issues. I shot back, I don't have trust issues, Julian. I have a fiancé planning to abandon me for a month with another woman issues. But he wouldn't let up. Called me dramatic and manipulative, said I was twisting things to make him the villain when he was just trying to be honest about his needs. Every single feeling I expressed, every legitimate concern, was immediately reframed as some personality defect. I was controlling. Insecure. Not ready for marriage. Too focused on the wedding. Too emotional. Too reactive. According to Julian, I was basically a walking collection of red flags that he was generously trying to work through because, bless his heart, he loved me despite my flaws. The audacity. Then, last week, he just announced it, cold as ice. He was going. He'd already bought plane tickets, booked accommodations, planned the whole thing with Sienna. 5 full weeks in Thailand and Bali. Wait, 5 weeks? It had grown from 4, without him even telling me. He was leaving in 2 weeks, getting back literally 1 week before our wedding. I asked him, how could he make such a massive decision without any input from me? His response? He'd considered my input, but ultimately, his mental health had to come first. He couldn't start our marriage already feeling resentful about missing this opportunity. I just stared. Do you understand, I asked him, how incredibly insulting it is that marrying me requires a month-long escape first? He immediately retorted that I was twisting his words again. This wasn't about escaping me, he insisted. It was about finding himself. And the fact that I couldn't see the difference apparently proved exactly why he needed the space. Every single conversation ended the same way. Every time, I was somehow the problem. My concerns were invalid. My feelings were irrational. My boundaries were controlling. And through it all, like a poisonous whisper, Sienna's voice was in his ear, telling him he was right, I was wrong. That he deserved this, and I was being selfish. Can you believe the absolute gall? So, here we are. 6 weeks of fighting. 6 weeks of being gaslit. 6 weeks of watching my fiancé meticulously plan an escape from our marriage before it even starts. And now, he wants dinner. To discuss wedding expectations. Part of me, the stupidly hopeful part, thought maybe, just maybe, he'd finally come to his senses. That the man I fell in love with would show up and we could actually salvage this mess. But a much, much bigger part of me knew exactly what was coming. He was going to announce he was going, no matter what I said or felt. Probably with a prepared speech about all the things I needed to work on while he was gone. Well, I decided I was done being the accommodating fiancé. Time to hear him out. Update number 1. I'm sitting in my car right now, in the restaurant parking lot, and I honestly can't decide if I want to laugh hysterically or just scream until my lungs burst. Remember how Julian wanted to discuss wedding expectations? Buckle up. Because this man just revealed exactly how little he thinks of me, of our relationship, and frankly, of women in general. I'm genuinely questioning every single decision I've made in the last 2 years. I got to the restaurant early, gave myself a quick 15-minute pep talk. That little, foolish part of me was still clinging to hope, hoping he'd finally realize how utterly insane he'd been acting, that maybe he'd come to his senses and we could salvage things. I should have known better. Julian walked in with this swagger, this unnerving confidence that immediately put me on edge. He kissed my cheek like everything was perfectly normal, sat down, and ordered us a bottle of wine like we were celebrating something. When the waiter finally left, I didn't waste any time. I asked him straight up, "What is this dinner really about, Julian?" He leaned back, all casual, and said he'd been reflecting a lot on our relationship and our upcoming marriage. My stomach nodded. His tone? It was pure therapist explaining things to difficult patients. He began, "Our recent disagreements about my trip have revealed some concerning patterns in your thinking, which I feel we need to address before moving forward with the wedding." My thinking? I asked him, very calmly, what patterns he was talking about. And get this, he actually had the audacity to pull out his phone. He showed me notes, like he'd literally compiled a list of my character flaws. He started with how I'd supposedly reacted emotionally instead of rationally to his trip announcement. How I'd made his needs about my insecurities instead of supporting his personal growth. How I seemed more focused on the wedding than the marriage, which worried him about my priorities. Each point was a punch to the gut, but I stayed completely silent, just letting him talk, because I needed to hear exactly how deep this delusion went. Then he got to the real point of the dinner. He said he'd decided. Not discussed. Not asked. He'd decided he was going on the trip, regardless of my feelings about it. He couldn't let my discomfort dictate his choices, or he'd end up resenting me for the rest of our marriage. He actually said this like he was being noble, like he was doing us both some huge favor by establishing boundaries before we even exchanged vows. I just looked at him. "Julian," I said, "do you understand that most people would consider planning a month-long vacation with another woman 2 months before their wedding to be a massive red flag, not a boundary?" He just waved his hand dismissively. "That's exactly the kind of conventional thinking that stifles relationships," he said. But wait. It gets so much better. He then launched into what he'd planned for me while he was gone. And I am quoting him word for word, because I will never forget this. He said, "I think you should use this time to really focus on preparing for your role as my wife." My jaw dropped. My role as your wife? I asked what he meant by that. He actually smiled, like he was about to impart some profound wisdom. He said, since I'd been so focused on my career, I hadn't really thought about the domestic side of marriage. His mom, he casually mentioned, had noted I didn't know how to make his favorite meals. So, maybe I could take some cooking classes? I could use the time to practice making our house more of a home instead of just a place we sleep. I sat there, utterly stunned, as he kept going. Marriage, he explained, would require me to shift my priorities a bit. Maybe even consider going part-time at work eventually so I could focus more on our home life and future family. Oh, and Sienna, of course, had really opened his eyes to how important it is for wives to support their husbands' ambitions instead of competing with them. He wanted clear roles and expectations, established now, before we made things official. I was speechless. I finally found my voice, though it felt small and shaky. Are you seriously telling me, I asked him, that I need to become a 1950s housewife while you go on vacation with another woman? He got this frustrated, exasperated look. You're twisting my words, he huffed. Said he just wanted me to understand that marriage requires sacrifice and compromise. And right now, he wasn't seeing much willingness to compromise from my end. I just scoffed. I've been compromising our entire relationship, Julian. While you've demanded I accept increasingly disrespectful behavior. But he just shook his head. That's exactly what I meant about your attitude, he said. You see support as disrespect, which reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of partnership. I wanted to scream. Then came the line that truly made me feel like I was talking to a complete stranger. He said, and I quote, "Supportive wives don't question their husbands' female friendships. If you can't handle me having close women friends, you're not ready for marriage. Part of being a wife is trusting your husband completely and not creating drama where none exists." I was beyond stunned. I finally, almost robotically, asked him, how would you feel if the roles were reversed? If I announced I was taking a month-long trip with a male friend 2 months before our wedding, told you to use the time to work on being a better husband, and suggested you go part-time to better support my career? And there it was. For just a split second, his mask slipped. I saw pure, unadulterated outrage flash across his face at the mere idea of me doing exactly what he was demanding I accept from him. But he caught himself quickly. That would be different, he stammered. Because men and women have different relationship needs. Women are naturally more nurturing and home-focused, while men need more freedom and independence. Comparing our situations isn't fair because the dynamics are fundamentally different. The nerve of this man. I just told him, straight to his face, that is the most sexist thing I have ever heard you say. He didn't even flinch. It's not sexist, he argued, it's biological reality. He said the fact that I was offended by basic gender differences just showed how influenced I'd been by modern feminist nonsense that was destroying healthy relationships. I couldn't even respond. I just sat there, staring at this man I'd agreed to marry, wondering if he'd become this person, or if he'd always been this person and I'd just been too blind to see it. He actually took my stunned silence as agreement and kept going. He laid out his demands for the next 2 weeks before he left. I was to stop complaining about his trip. I was to work on my domestic skills and my attitude. I was to think seriously about my career trajectory and how it would fit into our marriage. And, the cherry on top? I was to apologize to Sienna for being unwelcoming and hostile toward his friendship with her. Apologize to Sienna. The woman who'd been poisoning my relationship for months, the one who'd convinced my fiancé that I was the problem. It was unbelievable. I actually had to ask him, are you joking right now? He wasn't. He was completely serious. Sienna, he claimed, had been nothing but supportive of our relationship, and I had treated her terribly just because I was jealous and insecure. Said part of growing up and being ready for marriage meant acknowledging when you're wrong and making amends. I took a deep breath. I asked him about the logistics of our relationship while he was gone. Would we talk every day? Would I be involved in any decisions about the wedding? What was the plan? He got visibly uncomfortable, started hedging. Said he couldn't promise daily communication because he needed true separation to really think. Said I should handle the wedding details myself, since I clearly cared about them more than he did anyway. And he'd need flexibility, couldn't commit to specific check-ins because that defeated the purpose of freedom. He just kept piling it on. Then I decided to throw a little curveball. So, Julian, I asked, would Sienna be comfortable with me visiting? You know, if I decided to fly out and surprise you guys? The immediate, unequivocal no that burst out of him told me everything I needed to know. He stumbled through some excuse about how Sienna wasn't comfortable with me because of how I'd reacted to their friendship, and how bringing that energy into their trip would ruin the whole experience for both of them. So, let me get this straight. My fiancé was going on a month-long vacation with a woman who specifically didn't want me anywhere near them. And somehow, I was still the problem. Incredible. I finally just sat back, truly looked at him. This man who was supposed to be my partner, my equal, my future. And all I saw was someone who wanted a maid and a cheerleader, not a wife. Someone who'd rather listen to another woman's manipulative whispers than respect his own fiancée. Someone who genuinely thought marriage meant I'd lose myself while he gained some fantastical freedom. I asked him one last question, a simple, desperate plea: "Do you even want to marry me, Julian?" He looked genuinely offended. "Of course I do," he huffed. "That's why I'm trying to work through these issues now." I just shook my head. "It seems to me," I said, "that you want to marry a version of me that doesn't exist. Someone who'd happily stay home and cook while you traveled the world. Someone who'd never question you, or have needs of her own. Someone who'd put your freedom above her own dignity." He just rolled his eyes. "You're being dramatic again," he said, "and this is exactly why I need this trip, to get clarity on whether you're capable of being the partner I need." The sheer arrogance. By the time we left that restaurant, he'd made it crystal clear he was going on his trip in 2 weeks. I, apparently, was expected to spend that time working on myself. And when he got back, we'd reevaluate whether I'd grown enough to deserve to marry him. Like I should be grateful he was willing to give me a second chance to prove myself worthy. I'm still sitting in my car, trying to process what just happened. But honestly, I'm not sad. Not one bit. I'm furious. While Julian was busy explaining all the ways I needed to change, listing his ridiculous expectations for what kind of wife I should become, I was making some powerful realizations of my own. He wants freedom? He wants someone to show him what a supportive partner looks like? Oh, I'm about to give him a masterclass in both. Tomorrow, I'm making some calls. And I'm booking some trips of my own. If Julian thinks I'm going to sit at home, taking cooking classes and practicing my wifely duties while he parties in Thailand with Sienna, he is about to learn exactly how wrong he is. 2 weeks until his trip. Perfect. That gives me 2 weeks to plan mine. The gloves are officially off. Stay tuned. Alright, update number 2, you guys, I am having the absolute time of my life right now. And let me tell you, watching Julian's carefully planned manipulation completely blow up in his face is giving me more joy than I ever thought possible. If he wanted to test my boundaries and see how much disrespect I'd tolerate, well, he's about to discover I'm much, much better at this game than he ever imagined. So, the morning after that absolute disaster of a dinner, I woke up with complete, blinding clarity. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to give him the emotional reaction he was so clearly expecting. Instead, I started making calls. First call, to my boss, explaining I needed 3 weeks of vacation time, starting in 2 weeks. She was surprised, but bless her, totally supportive. Second call, to the best travel agent I could find. Third call, booking the trip of a lifetime. Greece, baby. Santorini, Mykonos, and Crete. A solo female adventure, leaving the exact same day as Julian's little Thailand escapade. That afternoon, Julian texted me, all smug, saying he was starting to pack and asking if I'd had time to think about what we discussed. Oh, I responded with the sweetest message. I have, I texted back. I've actually been thinking a lot about freedom and personal growth. I'm so glad we had that conversation. He called immediately, probably completely baffled by my tone. I answered, cheerful as could be, and told him I'd done some reflecting and realized he was absolutely right. We both needed space to figure out who we were as individuals. So, I'd booked myself a 3-week trip to Greece, leaving the exact same day as his Thailand adventure. The silence on the other end was, I swear, absolutely golden. Then he started sputtering, rambling about wedding planning and vendor meetings and dress fittings. I just sweetly reminded him that he'd said I was too focused on wedding details and should focus more on personal growth. So, I was taking his advice. The confusion, the sheer panic in his voice, was absolutely delicious. He asked who I was going with. "Oh, I'm going solo," I chirped. "Just like you taught me about the importance of independence and freedom in relationships." He actually tried to say that was different, because I had responsibilities at home. Responsibilities? What responsibilities? The cooking classes he'd suggested? I could learn to make moussaka in Greece just as easily as his mom's pot roast here. By the time we hung up, he was clearly unsettled. But he couldn't argue, because I was literally doing exactly what he told me to do, just not in the twisted, patriarchal way he'd imagined. That evening, I posted my plane tickets to Instagram. My caption? Short, sweet, and pointed. Some people get pre-wedding anxiety. I'm getting pre-wedding adventures. Sometimes the best marriages start with two people who truly know themselves. Julian called within minutes. "What is this supposed to mean?" he demanded. I just calmly explained I was being supportive of his philosophy about freedom before marriage, that I'd realized he was absolutely right about needing space to grow individually. The frustration, the sheer impotent rage in his voice, when he couldn't call me out without being a complete hypocrite? Chef's kiss. Absolutely perfect. The next 2 weeks were pure gold. Julian kept sending me updates about his packing, like I was supposed to be invested. Photos of his suitcase, his new travel backpack, questions about whether he should bring his nice shoes. I responded to each one with increasingly pointed, sugary sweet comments. "Oh, make sure to pack plenty of sunscreen for those beach clubs with Sienna." Or, "Don't forget nice outfits for all those romantic sunset dinners." He couldn't tell if I was being supportive or completely sarcastic, and it was driving him absolutely insane. Beautiful. Then, the big day arrived. Departure day. Julian and I both left for the airport. Him for Bangkok, me for Athens. The look on his face when he saw my perfectly packed bags, clearly not heading back home, was absolutely priceless. He'd clearly hoped I'd come around, maybe see him off like a good little fiancé, heartbroken. Instead, I was calling my own ride, bright-eyed and genuinely excited for my own incredible adventure. Suck on that, Julian. The first 2 days, I was posting the most gorgeous content from Santorini, dazzling white buildings against an impossibly blue sky, sunsets that stole my breath, blissful wine tastings, exploring charming villages. Meanwhile, Julian was posting typical, mundane tourist stuff, temples, street markets, him and Sienna making goofy faces at the camera. But then, on day 3, everything shifted. Julian's feed exploded into full-on beach club party content. And Sienna? She was in almost every single photo, wearing barely anything. We're talking Sienna in a tiny red bikini at an infinity pool, both of them with cocktails. Sienna in a neon pink string bikini on a boat. Beach club pictures where she was practically draped over him in a barely there white swimsuit. Pool party shots, her in a different bikini every single day, orange, yellow, black, each one more revealing than the last. My best friend Mara was screenshotting everything and sending it to me with a string of skull emojis, texting, "Is he serious right now? She's basically in lingerie in half these photos, and he was worried about you learning to cook moussaka with a local chef?" One particularly memorable post showed them at a rooftop bar at sunset, Sienna in a black bikini with a sheer sarong, literally leaning against him as they watched the view. The caption? "Living our best lives." Another had her in a leopard print bikini, lounging on a beach day bed right next to him. But then came the one that made Mara absolutely lose it. Sienna, in his hotel bathrobe, on their balcony, coffee cup in hand. The caption read, "Room service breakfast just hits different when you're living freely." My eyes nearly rolled out of my head. But I didn't comment on his posts. Not a peep. I was too busy actually living my best life. On day 3 in Santorini, I wandered into this tiny, family-owned restaurant, perched perfectly overlooking the caldera. The owner's grandson, Nico, took my order. We started talking, and I ended up staying for hours, just chatting with him and his amazing grandmother, Yada Katerina, about the island, about food, about life. He even offered to show me some hidden spots that tourists never see. Over the next few days, Nico became my incredible guide and my genuine friend. We explored hidden beaches. He taught me to cook traditional dishes in his grandmother's kitchen. We talked for hours about everything and nothing. And I started posting about it, too, but tastefully. Photos of the cooking lessons, breathtaking scenery, heartwarming moments with Yaya Katerina, everything real, authentic, and thankfully, fully clothed. Unlike the softcore resort where catalog Julian was posting, the contrast was absolutely stark. His posts looked like a spring break MTV special. More beach clubs, Sienna in a yellow bikini that was basically 3 triangles and a string. Her at beach bars, practically in his lap. Her in a white crochet bikini that truly left nothing to the imagination. Mine? Mine looked like a life-changing, cultural experience. Sunset cooking sessions, village explorations, genuine connections. And Julian? Oh, he noticed. His texts started getting concerned. Who's that guy in your stories? Are you hanging out with locals? Why aren't you answering your phone? I'd respond hours later, with breezy, innocent messages. Having an amazing time. Thought we were both enjoying our freedom. Meanwhile, his posts with Sienna just kept getting more and more provocative. Sienna in a metallic gold bikini at another beach club. Beach volleyball in barely their bottoms. And then, a particularly egregious post, them at a full moon party. Her in body paint and a bikini top, him with his arm wrapped around her. The internet, as they say, is forever, and he was documenting all of it. Mara sent that one to me with the all-caps text, "I'm sorry, body paint?" And he's got his arm around her? And he questioned you about making pastizio with a Greek grandmother? But the absolute best part? Watching Julian spiral. By week 2, his texts had gone from concern to full-blown panicked. We need to talk about boundaries. I don't think it's appropriate for you to be spending so much time with some random guy. Are you even thinking about our wedding? I just sweetly reminded him that he'd spent 6 weeks telling me that opposite-sex friendships were perfectly normal, and that anyone who had a problem with them was insecure. So, I was just being mature and trusting, like he'd asked me to be. The hypocrisy was so blatant, so utterly ridiculous, he couldn't even argue back. He was trapped in his own twisted logic. Meanwhile, I was genuinely falling for this new life. Nico was just kind. And funny. He treated me like an absolute equal, which felt like a revelation after Julian. We'd spend mornings at breathtaking beaches, afternoons cooking incredible food with Yaya Katerina, evenings watching the most spectacular sunsets and just talking about our dreams. There was no pressure, no games, no tests, no manipulation, just 2 people genuinely enjoying each other's company and seeing where things went. My posts reflected that, genuine joy, real laughter, authentic experiences. Julian's posts? Still party-focused, but there was a desperate, almost frantic energy about them now. More beach clubs, Sienna in a blue sequined bikini, more endless bikini shots, a red string bikini against a sunset. But his captions? They were getting defensive. Living without apologies. Some people understand freedom, some people don't. By the end of week 2, Julian was trying to video call me multiple times a day. I'd usually decline, texting back that I was busy or the connection wasn't good. The few times I did answer, I kept it short and sweet. Yes, I was having an amazing time. Yes, Nico was wonderful. Yes, I was learning so much about myself. And then, oh, gotta go. We're heading to another beach/family dinner/adventure. Click. His last string of posts, right before everything completely fell apart, were almost sad. More full moon party content. Sienna in neon body paint and a bikini top. Different angles of the exact same party, Julian trying desperately to look like he was having the time of his life. But I could see the cracks, the forced smiles, the try-hard captions. Then, on Sunday of week 3, the messages from him turned utterly desperate. We need to talk immediately. Something happened with Sienna. I want to come home early. This trip was a mistake. But I was too busy being genuinely happy to care. I was at a beach bonfire with Nico and his friends, watching the sun dip below the horizon, speaking broken Greek, laughing at my own mistakes, eating the most amazing food, feeling more myself than I had in years. Some people plan freedom trips to test their partners. But some people, like me, discover that real freedom has absolutely nothing to do with tests, or trips, or proving points. It's about choosing yourself. It's about refusing to accept anything less than you deserve. Julian was about to find out that while he was busy posting bikini pics with his friend, I was busy falling in love with an actual life worth living. Get ready for the final update. Alright, final update, and I literally cannot stop smiling at what just happened. ***, Julian video called me, and you guys, he completely melted down on camera. Honestly? It was exactly what he deserved. So, after 3 weeks of increasingly panicked messages from Julian about needing to talk and how things went wrong with Sienna, I finally answered his video call. I was at Nico's family restaurant, bathed in the golden hour light, the sun setting majestically over the Mediterranean behind me. I looked genuinely happy because, guess what? I was genuinely happy. Julian, on the other hand? He was calling from some dingy, sad-looking hostel in Bangkok, looking absolutely wrecked. He immediately launched into this pathetic sob story about how Sienna had met some Australian guy named Dylan and ditched him over a week ago. How he'd been all alone in Thailand, how the trip wasn't what he'd expected, how he wanted to come home early and work on us. He looked like he'd been sleeping in his clothes for days. And me? I felt absolutely nothing. Nothing but pure, unadulterated relief that I hadn't wasted one more second on him. I coolly told him, "I'm not coming home, Julian." His face cycled through about 5 different emotions in 3 seconds flat: confusion, disbelief, then blinding anger, then sheer panic. "What do you mean you're not coming home? Your trip is almost over," he shrieked. I just smiled. "I'm staying in Greece. With Nico. And the wedding is off." The explosion was immediate. "You're throwing away our entire relationship for some vacation fling? For some guy you just met," he raged. I stayed completely, unnervingly calm, which only seemed to enrage him more. "You threw it away, Julian," I said, "when you told me marrying you meant losing your freedom." Turns out, I was the one who was trapped. Greece didn't just give me freedom, Julian. It gave me clarity. Bang. He started sputtering, begging even, about how we could work through this, how his trip was a mistake, how he'd been wrong. I cut him off. "I've spent 3 weeks with someone," I told him, "who treats me as an equal. Someone who doesn't think supporting me means silencing myself. Someone who doesn't need to run away to another country with another woman to figure out if he wants me." The contrast is pretty stark, Julian. That's when he completely flipped. He shifted from pathetic to pure rage. Started screaming about how I was vindictive and irrational. How I was throwing away 2 years over nothing. How I'd planned this whole thing to hurt him. I just looked at him. "You literally told me to work on myself while you were gone," I reminded him. So, I did. I worked on remembering what it felt like to be valued. And you know what's really funny, Julian? I've been more productive working remotely from Greece than I ever was listening to you tell me I should go part-time. Turns out I didn't need to sacrifice my career. I needed to leave you. He completely lost it then. He was screaming, absolutely howling, about how Nico was probably just using me. How I was being naive. How I'd regret this. All this, while he looked like he hadn't showered in days, sitting in a sad, dingy hostel bed, all alone, because his best friend had abandoned him. "Speaking of using people," I said, in my sweetest voice, "how's Sienna?" "Oh, wait. She left you for Dylan. Or did she?" I paused for effect. "Because I'm curious, Julian, does Dylan even exist?" The look on his face told me everything. My suspicion was right. There was something he wasn't saying about Sienna's disappearance, but I didn't need the gory details. I just needed to be done. Done, done, done. Here's what's going to happen, Julian, I said, calm as a summer breeze. You're going to handle canceling all the wedding vendors. You're going to tell everyone why the wedding is off. And you are going to leave me alone to live my life. He tried one last, desperate manipulation. Get over yourself, ISA, he sneered. I'm giving you one last chance to stop being ridiculous before we're done. I actually laughed. A real, genuine laugh. Julian, I said, we've been done since you told me to learn to cook while you partied with another woman in bikinis. I just needed 3 weeks in Greece to remember what I deserve. And it's definitely not this. While you were posting thirst traps with Sienna at beach clubs, Julian, I was building something real, I continued, my voice firm. While you were testing my loyalty, I was discovering I deserve someone who never makes me prove my worth. While you were finding yourself, I was finding someone who never, ever made me feel lost. I could see movement in the background of his video feed, probably some other hostile guest peeking. Good. Let whoever was there hear this. Enjoy explaining to everyone, I finished, how you threw away your fiancé for a freedom trip. How you chose your single friend's twisted advice over your partner. How you posted bikini photos with another woman 2 months before your wedding, and then got mad when I actually took your advice about independence. And with that, I hung up. While he was still sputtering, still trying to respond. I blocked his number immediately. Then, I turned to Nico, who'd been pretending not to watch from across the restaurant. He came over, and I kissed him properly, truly, for the very first time. And it felt like coming home. In a way my actual home never had. My phone absolutely exploded with messages from friends and family. Apparently, Julian immediately started calling everyone, trying to spin his pathetic version of the story. But little did he know, Mara had already been group texting everyone, screenshots of his bikini-filled Thailand posts, and my message about him wanting me to learn to be domestic while he was gone. The support was overwhelming, heartwarming. 3 days later, Mara sent me the tea I'd been waiting for. Sienna wasn't just some innocent friend. Oh no. She was a full-blown con artist, running a long game. There was no Dylan. She had drained Julian's bank account, maxed out his credit cards, and stolen his passport before vanishing into thin air. He'd been stranded in Bangkok for 2 weeks, had to call his parents for emergency money just to get home. The police report Mara found online revealed Sienna had done this to multiple men. Fake identity, fake friendship, real theft. Julian had literally thrown away our relationship for a scammer who saw him coming a mile away. I texted Mara back, he really threw away a real woman for a literal criminal. The universe, Mara added, has a hell of a sense of humor. And get this, all those bikini photos? They're still up. The internet is forever. Everyone can see him draped all over a known scammer. Apparently, Julian's parents had even asked about me, devastated they'd lost me as a future daughter-in-law. His mom told Mara I was the best thing that ever happened to him. But I was already gone. Already building a new, incredible life. 3 months later? I'm still in Greece. I've extended my visa, working remotely for my company, helping out at Nico's family restaurant whenever I can, learning Greek from the amazing AITA Katerina, cooking ancient family recipes, completely integrated into village life. I am happy in a way I didn't even know was possible. My last Instagram post was simple, but powerful. A photo of me and Nico at a beach bonfire, genuine laughter echoing around us, surrounded by incredible friends. My caption? Chose freedom. Found myself. Never settling again. Mara commented, from almost bride to Greek island goddess. This is what choosing yourself looks like. And that, my friends, is the lesson. To anyone out there dealing with someone who thinks they can test you, manipulate you, or make you smaller to fit their pathetic vision, don't argue. Don't beg. Just choose yourself. And then, watch them realize, too late, exactly what they lost. Julian wanted freedom. He got it, all right. Just not the kind he ever imagined. And me? I got something so much better. A life where I'm truly valued, profoundly respected, and gloriously free. Living well? Oh, it really is the best revenge.